Okay, go. Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Hopefully we are coming to you live. If anyone could let us know if you can see and hear us, that would be great.
Seems like YouTube at least is reporting that we're live.
We should be broadcasting now. It's just coming up past 8:27 here in Newfoundland. We figured we'd start just a couple of minutes early as usual. So if someone can let us know if you can see and hear us, that would be good.
We're glad to know that we got the time right, since this half an hour time zone thing is
You're gonna put that panel on top.
messing with our heads.
Yeah, it's a weird thing here with a half-hour time zone. It's very odd. Hey, there we go. Sounds good. Hi, Bob, Mike, Debbie, Jim, Mickey. Good to see you all.
Mike.
I see everybody. Hi, Hans is there, and the Locks are here, and TR. Oh, that's good. That's good. So we have just a couple of minutes to go before it's the actual start time. We figured we'd just give everybody a chance to get here and show you a scene or two from where we are. Hi, I see Mom is here. Hiya, Mom.
And
John Shretland's here.
Hello. You're getting finally some clear air out west, John. I hope the skies are blue again.
Yeah, we've been hearing about how terrible the smoke is out west this year, and we're thinking about all of you who are on the west coast and even further east with how bad the smoke has been. So why don't we just give you a quick idea where we are while we're waiting for it to officially be 8:30 here, 8 o'clock in Nova Scotia, 7 o'clock on the east coast, and across the country to 4 o'clock on the west coast. Half-hour time zones are the strangest thing ever. So why don't you give a quick shot at how we got out here.
Yes.
Don's here from Fort Wayne, and
great.
Iggy's here too. Hi, Iggy. So we left our RV behind in Nova Scotia, as some of you may know if you follow us on Instagram, and here's a shot of us driving onto the ferry to get out here to Newfoundland in the car. This was
about 2 weeks? No,
a
10 days ago?
week and a half ago.
I forget how long ago it was.
It seems like we've been here a long time, and you'll see as we drive here into the ferry,
It was big.
It is enormous. Enormous. It was just, we've been on a lot of ferries before. This one was very big.
Yeah.
And so it was a 16-hour overnight ferry ride to get out here. And the reason we left the RV behind and brought the car was really two things. The biggest one being is it's so expensive to bring an RV out here because, of course, they charge by length. And the other is that there are some remote spots here that we just wanted to be able to, kind of come and go as we please from just about anywhere and not be tied down to RV parks, campgrounds, and we didn't know what the boondocking situation was like out here. So we thought just for about 2 weeks, didn't make sense. We're going from bed and breakfast to lodge to hotel. You may see behind us, you can see we're in a very boring, average hotel room.
With good Wi-Fi.
And the reason we're here for one night and one night only is to make sure we had very good Wi-Fi so we could come to you tonight without interference.
Yeah. We've had an awful lot of 3G cellular up here in Newfoundland, so we weren't going to rely on that for this connection.
So I see that also Brian is here. Hi, Brian. Hot in New York, hopefully cooler. So it has gotten comfortable here, although the people here tell us that it was a very warm summer. They had almost no icebergs here this year.
Yeah.
Those of you who follow us on Instagram may have seen we were in St. John's. Then we were up in hiking this incredible trail. Maybe we've got a couple of pictures here we can show you. Again, while we're waiting to officially start. That is...
We're having that glitch again here with it.
You'll figure it out. John's going to get our slide straightened out there. That is a picture right there that we took along the...
Skirwink Trail.
That's the Skirwink Trail.
It runs from Port
Rexton
to
Trinity.
Yeah.
And we spent the night in a little B&B in Trinity. We put a picture of that on Instagram. Another shot we have for you here to share is in... that was up near... That was the day before yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was up in Twillingate.
Yeah, that was
way up north. This is the town where they see all the
icebergs
when they are in, and the
this
scenery here.
Head, yeah, really easy hike actually.
French Head and French Beach. The scenery is ridiculous.
Like beautiful up here.
It's just incredible. And for those of you, we've been getting notes from people saying when they've seen our pictures on Instagram that they need to add it to their bucket list, and they do. I see that John Shretlin is asking what town we're in. We are in. I have to look at the calendar on the phone. We're in Grand Falls, Windsor, and we're just here for one night. Tomorrow morning we're leaving and we're going straight to Grossmorn National Park, which is the biggest national park, I believe, in Newfoundland.
Yes.
So I think that's all of our home movies we're going to bore you with.
That's a small slideshow.
Yeah. So it's 8:33. You see, we have quite a bunch of you here. We're going to go ahead and get started officially. So one thing we're going to do is since this is a topic that covers anything, as we said,
it's a potpourri.
Yeah, what we'll do is at the end, after we're done, we're going to go back and we're going to list a brief synopsis of each question that was asked and a timestamp for where it is in the archived video. So if you're watching this video archived after tonight, right now it's Wednesday, August 29th, but if you're watching this archived and you want to know what the questions were in case there's one you're interested in and you want to just jump to it, after we're done here, we'll go ahead and list out all the questions that we're talking about and the timestamp for when you can go to in the archived video.
Right.
Plus,
so
we're going
on Patreon in the post about this video.
We'll update the post.
Those will actually be links. If you click them, it'll take you right to YouTube to that timestamp.
And we'll put those in the video description on YouTube as well. And also, we're going to be talking and answering some questions tonight. We're going to answer things that involve quite a number of products that are available in different places, and we will also add those links into the post after we're done here tonight. So let's see if we have any last people to say hello to. I see Kenny and Sabrina are here.
Except it's Kenny.
Oh.
Sabrina had to work.
Okay.
Somebody's got to pay the bills, right, Kenny?
Sorry, Kenny. Tell Sabrina we said hello.
That's right.
And I see Iggy did the Maritimes in 2016. This is our second time in the Maritimes. We were here in 2012 for the whole summer.
If those couple of pictures from the 2 hikes we did and getting on the ferry and everything aren't enough to encourage you to come up this way, definitely get up here. It's really
it's beautiful, and we wish we had more time. But I have to say this because my mom is here again tonight. We're heading to visit family.
That's right.
For Thanksgiving, so we have to leave here soon. Anyway, let's start right in with the very first question. And John Shretlin, who's here with us tonight from BC, jumped right in with 3 questions right off the bat. Thank you, John. He wanted to know how our Acuva Eco Water Purifier is working out, and do we still sanitize a couple of times a year? He mentioned that with a good BC water, he doesn't think that we'd have to. So a couple of things. First off, the Eco is working great.
Still love it.
And we can tell you now we already have shot a second video about the Eco for an important reason. It's the first product we've ever used that we realized we couldn't exactly demonstrate its effectiveness just by showing it. It's not like something...
It's not like plugging in an LED and instantly seeing brighter, whiter light or
a lower power draw
or
less heat. It's not like using an air compressor to fill your tires or a bore scope to look inside your water heater. It wasn't demonstrable. So what we did was we took water samples from a wild river that we were staying near, and we took that water sample to Acuva's headquarters on the University of British Columbia campus. And there, they also had prepared a known contaminated source of water. And we took 4 samples, 2 from one directly from the river, 1 directly from their known bad sample, and put those in sample jars to go to a laboratory. And then we ran both of those water sources through an Acuva Eco and got 2 more samples of river water and known bad water filtered through the Acuva. We sent those off to the lab.
You have to wait for the video.
Well, we can tell you here on just because this is private here on Patreon, we can tell you the results already. Basically, is that
it works.
It works. The Acuva Eco works. And we also can tell you that not only will we have that video out within the next couple of months, but Acuva has a new model coming out that we are hopefully going to debut soon. We're trying to coordinate with them as to when that's going to be available. So the answer to that is it works great. We, as far as how often we sanitize, John, we've only sanitized once since we got the Eco.
Yeah.
And the reason we did that, it's interesting you mentioned BC water. So John knows we spend a lot of time in BC, and the water is very good. But the place we spend most time has well water.
Right.
So there's no chlorine in it. It's not coming from a municipal plant.
And so that had been sitting in the freshwater tank since we got back to BC and spent the summer, or I guess actually a lot of the winter this year. So we did do a sanitizing treatment on the tank before we hit the road, just to make sure that since it hadn't had any chlorinated water in there, we killed anything off before we hit the road. So
sometimes the better water might need more treatment if it sits because it doesn't have chlorine.
Yeah, right. But ironically, I still I feel weird drinking water that hasn't come out of the Acuva. So
yeah, we generally don't.
Even bottled water. We've got bottled water, and I still think it hasn't been run through an Acuva.
So now John had a second question.
Yes.
But I want to say hello to Lisa, who's here with us now.
Oh, yay. Lisa, you made it.
So great to see you here, Lisa. I'm glad you could make it.
I'm sorry, we haven't worked out before for you.
Well, here we are. So John's second question
Oops, I jumped ahead, sorry.
Oh, see that? My technical man's going to fail here. Any new cleaning tools, tips, or tricks?
Yes.
So we have a couple of things.
Yes, we do.
One is the Meguiar's clay bar we've been trying out on the windshield.
I don't know if it was someone in this group or someone else on YouTube who had mentioned when they'd seen the steel wool trick for cleaning your windshield, had asked about whether or not we tried using a clay bar. And so we had gotten a clay bar for doing some cleanup on the car to get some of the tar spots off of the car finish. So we've been sort of testing it for that purpose, and we have begun using it on the windshield. Actually, I did it on the car before we came up here to Newfoundland. We are liking it. We haven't come to a conclusion yet as to whether or not we like it as much or better than using the steel wool.
But that'll be one of the products we put a link to down below in the video description and in the Patreon post after we're done here tonight, or within the next day or two. Also, we're looking at a new type of California duster type product that promises to be better. We haven't gotten our hands on one yet, but we're going to put a link to it down below also afterwards. So again, if you're watching this archived, maybe if you try it, you can leave a comment, or if you've tried it before. I don't remember the name of it, but we'll have that information afterward.
Yeah. Because we love our California duster as the one that we use now, but it is a wax impregnated sort of cotton fabric, all those little dongly things.
It has paraffin in it.
And so sometimes first of all, you've got to treat it in the beginning, got to leave it on newspaper or whatever to get some of the excess paraffin off, and sometimes it leaves streaks. So the new one I think is all microfiber and possibly also washable, so that would be good. We
also have a tip that we've been using for the last couple of years that will work on any car, any motorhome with regular automotive type paint. And that is Meguiar's NXT Next Generation Tech Wax.
It's a mouthful.
It is the greatest. Meguiar's NXT. You'll find it on the RVgeeks.com and our favorite gear. It is the greatest wax ever created.
Yeah, we love it. I
told my cousin about this, who's a fanatic about keeping his beautiful new pickup truck perfect. And he said, I only use Carnauba. And I said, try Meguiar's NXT and you will never go back.
It's so easy on, it's easy off.
He said it's the greatest thing he ever used. So if you're not using Meguiar's NXT,
give it a check.
There's a tip for you. And last cleaning tip.
So we have some stainless steel potware. Not that we're good cooks at all, but it lasts. And so we use Barkeeper's Friend to clean the stainless steel. I actually had read somewhere about using it on the Corian sink. So we've got a white undermount Corian sink in our kitchen. It gets stained over time. We use OxyClean to sort of soak the stains out.
That was the topic of one of our videos.
Works great, but we were also getting light surface scratches in it. And you can use I think Corian actually sells a set of like 3M pads that you can use to polish the scratches back out of it.
The barkeeper's friend
the
worked really well.
barkeeper's friend actually works amazingly well. I've been using it sort of when I do the pots. I'll just sprinkle a little extra in the sink, and when I'm done, just polish it off, and it's actually slowly removing the surface scratches in the bottom of the sink, and it also takes out some of the staining too. So we may end up doing a video about that at some point once I decide if I really like it.
And I'm so excited that Lisa Cantrell is here with us tonight because
she has a question.
Coming up.
Yes,
I just realized that as I'm looking ahead. So,
so hang in there, Lisa.
Hang in there, Lisa. Don't go away. Last quick question for that John asked was, do we have any new connectivity updates being tested? Now, before John shows this one device, I want to mention.
Show and tell.
I want to mention we're away from the RV, so we don't have as much show and tell as usual. But
right.
I do want to mention that you may have heard us say this before, that Chris and Cherie of Technomatia and RV Mobile Internet, they are the gurus of mobile connectivity, whether you're on a boat or on an RV, and everything we know we've learned from them. But this is one we're working on.
So if staying connected is important to you, absolutely join RV Mobile Internet because it's a godsend. But this little wonder, gotta get it here in the camp. This is a Netgear MIMO antenna. And so if you have, actually here.
I'll hold this for you.
Two things. I forgot I was going to do two show and tells. So we have our MiFi. It's a Verizon Jetpack. It's a Netgear AC791L is the model.
I'll just show this from the side, and a couple of suction cups on it.
But this Jetpack has two little notches here, and if you look closely, you can see those two little TS9 ports. There's one here, and then one over here.
And this plugs into it.
Yes. So if you have a device like this little MIMO antenna, it's under $30.
It's very inexpensive, and we'll put a link again to this down below.
Plugs right into your MiFi, and then it has suction cups, so you just stick it in whichever window is pointing towards the nearest cell tower, and it can get you incredible speeds on your device. So there are times when this little $30 unit is what we use instead of our $600 WeBoost booster, because if you're the situations it works best are if you are near to a tower but far enough away that your device itself is not getting very strong signal. This will boost it, and it's boosting it on two different channels, so you're getting the multi-in, multi-out, so you get the extra speeds. Once you start getting to a point where you're far enough away from a tower that even having this directional antenna isn't improving it, then regardless of this being MIMO, the WeBoost kicks in and does way better. So it's great to have in your arsenal.
It's so inexpensive, and between this and the WeBoost,
yeah, when we get someplace, if we turn on the MiFi and it's not getting good signal, or we don't have good strength on the phone, the first thing I try is this because it's so easy. Now the only downside to it is that the cable is not very long. Of course, it's twisted.
That's the whole cable.
The whole cable is only like
3 feet.
3 feet, maybe 4 feet. So you have to keep your MiFi close to wherever you're going to mount this. If you have to mount it in a window where it's far away, the nice part is, of course, all of your devices are connecting via Wi-Fi to the MiFi anyway.
And I see my mother just said she wants one of those now.
Oh, for God's sakes!
So
I'm going to make sure I keep an eye on this when we're there, Mom. No stealing, please.
I'm going to mention also that Iggy said he'd love to see a full coach Acuva type system. They do make Acuvas that handle a higher flow. As a matter of fact, Nikki and Jason have one on their boat that handles a higher flow than we do. However, it's still not a whole house type thing. It's just higher flow rate.
Yeah, I think the largest one they have handles 10 liters a minute. So you might not want to use that where it's going to potentially limit your flow in the shower and that kind of thing. Plus, you probably don't really need to sanitize the water you're showering in unless you also drink it while you're in there.
Well, and it's perfect timing that we just mentioned Chris and Cherie, because I see that they're here.
Yes.
And they say that they love the MIMO, and thank you.
Please, everyone, remind them that we gave them props because they are the gurus of all of this tech. So
after you're done here, if you really want to learn about staying connected, don't listen to us.
No,
we're pikers. We just parrot back what we learned from Chris and Cherie on RV Mobile Internet, and don't forget that we have a special code you can use to get a discount there if you join.
And Kenny asked a question, not a silly one at all. Do you stick it on the inside or outside? The suction cups just go on the inside of the window, so it's just again going through the glass but pointing directly towards wherever the antenna is or wherever the tower you think is closest. So you don't have to put it out the window, just sits inside.
Okay, and just to keep up with the chat, I see the Locks just got back from a caravan trip to BC, and they lost their transmission in Williams Lake. Well, these sorts of things can help with that. And
yeah, having good connectivity when you're stuck someplace because your RV's broken down could be a lifesaver.
Got it. Okay, so good. So Chris and Cherie are here now. That's great. So you can answer questions about anything that comes up with connectivity.
We're going to pawn them off.
So again, we're really thrilled that Lisa can be here with us live for the first time. She has the next question. She said she's in a few Facebook RVing groups, and they've been discussing whether to turn the city water off when hooked up and leaving the rig. And Lisa said they've only been full-timing for 4 years. Lisa, that's a long time.
Exactly.
You are an old long timer now already.
Careful, don't call her old.
But it didn't. But she said it didn't occur to them, and she's not convinced that they have to turn the water off because they have a regulator.
Good.
And they just got a gauge. Other people talk about turning off the pump. What do we do? Well, most of the time, because we always use a water pressure regulator, and we leave it on all night while we're sleeping. We leave the water on at the spigot outside. When we go away, we run out. We go hiking for the day. We go shopping. We don't generally turn the water off.
No.
I'd say the only time we shut the outside water off and we're hooked up is when we're gone for the entire day, for a really long day, or overnight. Now, that isn't saying that is the right thing to do. I'm sure anyone who's ever had a pipe burst would say, don't ever do that.
Right. Well, and in the beginning, and when the RV was new, we never even stopped and thought about it. We had it hooked up at an RV park, and if we went out for an all-day hike or we're going to be gone all day, I don't think we ever even stopped to think about it because, we just weren't concerned. As our RV is getting older, it's 13 years old now, I think it's sort of weighing a little bit more in the back of our mind that there could be the potential for a failure while we were out. So we are more cognizant of when we are away for the RV for a long time, now, turning it off.
There's also one thing. We have something that's not the most common piece of equipment that RVs have, and that's an electric flush toilet.
Yeah, the Thetford Aria.
And if there were a failure in the mechanism that triggers the gate valve to open and the flush to go.
The early units specifically had this failure.
The big danger we would have is that the toilet would start to flush and just keep flushing. And imagine having your gray tank overflow through your shower. Imagine how bad it would be if your black tank overflowed up through the toilet.
No.
So there is a safety device on the toilet that if it cycles more than 10 squirts into the toilet, it will shut off. But if that were to fail, it could be pretty serious. And as a result, when we leave the RV in storage for any length of time, we not only, of course, disconnect or shut water off, but we also pull the fuse on the water pump. But that's only when we're in storage. Now, we're in storage right now because, as we mentioned, we left the RV behind in Nova Scotia to come here to Newfoundland. But all of our batteries are completely shut down, everything. So
there's no chance
the toilet or the water pump couldn't flush, and obviously we're not hooked up. But to answer your question, basically, Lisa, we're not typically overly paranoid about things like that. We don't like to be foolish and create a self-inflicted wound, but we generally just leave the water turned on.
Yeah.
So that kind of answers that
one. Well, we may live to regret that one day.
Yes, if that could happen.
And then our tune will likely change.
Right. Let's see if there's anything here. Great. Thank you, Chris and Cherie, for mentioning that about the Mimo, the Netgear Mimo. Let's go ahead, and you want to jump ahead to the next one? Brian Gasser said, I'm interested in the process you use to buy a coach. How do you determine which floor plan, manufacturer, and dealer to purchase from? I was originally looking at a Sprinter-based RV or a small Class A. Not sure how much use it will get. Brian, I would say that your last statement is the first key to what we might look at. Yes. So the fact that you're not sure how much use it will get leads us to think, hopefully correctly, that you're not a full-timer. And maybe the first decision that would send you in a particular direction is how much you're going to use your RV.
Right.
Full time is one whole world of requirements and needs, and
occasional weekender is
we
completely different.
have friends who use their rigs maybe half a dozen weekends a year in 1 week, and then there are people who go down south for the season.
So a lot of that will drive your decision about where your price point is. So if you're not going to be using it very much, and you also have a vehicle that could tow a towable, then towable RVs are A, a lot less expensive, B, a lot less complicated to maintain, and C, going to provide you a lot of space for the money. Basically, you can get a slightly larger unit that would give you more room.
Yeah, you're not paying for a second drivetrain.
Exactly.
Now, some of that may have to do with, do you already own a vehicle that is capable of towing a towable?
Right.
So that's a big question. If you already own, say, a sport utility or a pickup truck or something that can tow either a travel trailer or a fifth wheel, that could play into your decision about what to get. There are a couple of things that we generally recommend, and many people have heard us say this before. We always recommend buying the smallest RV you think you can be comfortable in. But that said, floor plan is king. Floor plan, floor plan, floor plan.
And it really does, it really is an iterative process. Because when we first started looking at RVs, we assumed we were going to buy a used Class A gas. And our first RV ended up being a brand new diesel pusher. So it was a process of starting to looking at what was available at the price points, what you were getting for that, and that sort of led us down, looking at all the different things. You will end up slowly narrowing it down to, obviously, first a style of RV. Is it going to be a towable or a Sprinter chassis, Class B, or a Class A gas, or a diesel pusher? You'll narrow that category down, and then start finding the manufacturers in that category that make the nicest product, or the products that sort of hit your hot buttons in your price range, and then start narrowing it down to models and floor plans.
And sometimes
it's a whittling.
Sometimes it may be based on finances. So if someone has, let's suppose you start by looking at the RV that you're interested in, and you say, "Oh, I found the RV that I love. It's just perfect. It has everything I want. A Newmar King Air." And then you realize it's an $800,000 RV, but you only have $100,000 to spend.
Right.
So sometimes if you have a certain budget in mind to start with, that can help. And do you plan to take out a loan? Is it a rig that you're able to take out a loan on? Those sorts of financial things could drive it. If money's no object and you want what you want, you may still not end up with the largest RV, because maybe you want to get into state and national parks, national forests. You want something smaller.
Right.
Do you plan to boondock? So now you have to look at tank capacities.
Batteries,
solar,
the
the addition of solar.
There's so many variables.
And here's one for you. So the full private bath versus split bath issue is a big floor plan question. So
versus bath and a half.
So we give this example. Our first RV had a full private bath, and for those of you who don't know what full private bath means, it means the toilet, sink, and shower all in one room. We did not like that. It did not work for us.
And actually, we specifically pursued a floor plan that had that, because we
thought that's what we wanted.
So we had it.
That means maybe you should consider buying your long-term RV as your second one, not try to get it on your first one. So maybe buy used first to find out what works for you if this is your first purchase. Getting back to bathrooms, here's why full private bath didn't work for us. And it may not be the same for every couple or every person on the road. We only want complete privacy in one place. That's when using the toilet. We want our privacy there and nowhere else. So what if someone's in the shower and the toilet and the shower are together in the same room, and that's not uncommon for someone to want to use the toilet while their partner is in the shower? Well, if you have a full private bath, you can't do that unless you are willing, unless you're comfortable using the toilet in front of each other, which many people are. So one option is to go for a bath and a half, which means you've got two toilets on board, and now if someone's in the shower, the other person can use the half bath. Well, we didn't want that either, because we don't want an extra toilet. We don't need two toilets. It's something extra to clean, and it's space we can use for other things.
And unfortunately, usually one, if not both of those toilets will be a macerating toilet, which tends to use more water because it has to pump it forward from the rear of the coach to where the tanks are. And so those are not great for boondocking long term. So that's another factor to consider. In some of those situations, the half bath toilet will be situated right over the black tank and is just a regular gravity dump toilet, but sometimes they're both vacuum flush.
The bottom line is it's a very difficult and personal question. I apologize we aren't giving you a specific answer telling you what year, make, and model to buy, Brian, but obviously that's very hard to do.
It really is a decision tree process, and everyone has to go through it because everyone's endpoint is going to be different.
And I will tell you this. We don't go into the assumption that if you go to, let's say you choose Newmar, for example, which we did our second time, and you may think, oh, Newmar is a very good brand. If I go to a Newmar dealer, I'm going to be going to a quality dealer. Just like if I were going to buy a Mercedes, I'm safe going to any Mercedes dealer and getting a Mercedes because by definition that dealer has to be of a certain caliber. Our purchase experience with our Newmar was so awful that we can't even describe how bad it was, and we won't get into that here, but suffice it to say that not only is that dealer no longer a Newmar dealer, because Newmar revoked their dealership shortly after that, but we don't even know if they're in business anymore. It was that bad.
Yeah.
So don't go into that assumption.
But again, so there's factors of how you're planning on using the motorhome. So for us as full timers, we were buying a motorhome and hitting the road and going full time. That meant a quote unquote local dealer was not a factor for us because we were never going to be going back to whatever dealer we bought it from anyway. If you are talking about using an RV much less frequently, then your local dealer may now be more important to you because you're going to be relying on them for service.
And you want to establish a relationship with a local dealer.
As much as it would be nice to say that dealers treated all customers equally, they definitely treat customers who bought from them better than they treat people who are coming through. So if you buy an RV from a faraway dealer and then expect to get the same treatment for service when you go into your local dealer to get it serviced, you're not probably going to have that experience. So then that may lean you towards skewing towards your local dealer just because you want to establish that relationship with them for service.
Now, before we get to our next question, I just want to keep up with the chat. I see that John Shretland said, in storage, don't we shut down all power? Yes. All power is currently shut down on the RV.
With the new lithium, that's even easier than it was before because there's a button right on the battery that kills all power out of the battery, so there's no parasitic drain. Also, the Locks asked, what did it cost to take our car to Newfoundland? There's two ways to get to Newfoundland, ferry-wise that is, as opposed to by air. Obviously, you can fly in. There is a 16-hour ferry that goes from Sydney, Nova Scotia, up to Argentia, which is near St. John's on the east side, and then we're driving from east to west Newfoundland,
and we'll end up in next week we'll end up in Port aux Basques, and then it's only a 7-hour ferry ride back to Sydney in Nova Scotia.
Do you remember how much it cost? I can pull it, actually.
It was,
we probably have the receipt here.
John will take a look here.
I forget what the amount was.
I think it was something like $600, if I'm not mistaken. It was expensive.
We got a cabin.
Oh, that's it right there. No, that's not it. No, that's the travel insurance.
Yep.
Did you find it?
I think this is it. Here's our itinerary report. I think this is the invoice.
There it is.
So for the car, 2 passengers, and we
got a 4-berth cabin because it was all that was left because we wanted to sleep.
The grand total was $690
Canadian dollars, which is about $525 US dollars.
Yeah, take about 25% off.
Keep in mind that included a cabin. You don't have to get a cabin.
Correct.
But we wanted to get a good night's sleep. Had a private bathroom.
Yeah, they do have you can reserve an air.
Get that on the screen back. Perfect. So it's not cheap, and of course we've got to pay to go back too. So let's see if there's anything else.
A lot of people are seconding our emotions about Cherie and Chris. So
yes,
you guys take a virtual bow because you deserve it. You
Cherie
work so
and Chris,
hard.
We're thrilled and honored that you're here, and we always tell everybody. Mm-hmm. There really is not anybody out there who knows more about staying connected than you two do. Yes. And thank you for all your for sharing all your knowledge.
You guys deserve all the praise and then some. So take it.
Right. John Shretland also recommends renting first, and then you'll learn all about all the RV toilets and small kitchens. Good. So let's jump into the next one. Sal had a question.
Yes, indeed, Sal.
Sal said, what do you use to keep pests out of your rig? We assume you're not talking about
the
human type. Did you take any measures?
We pull the blinds and pretend not to be home for those.
Did you take any measures now that you're away for a few weeks? So there's a couple. We have had several different types of pests over our 15 plus years on the road. We've had ants on board twice, once in the bounder that we got in Key Largo because we parked touching a tree branch.
And once actually just recently
once
in
was
Quebec.
about a month ago because our electrical cord came out the bottom of the rig and was laying right on an anthill about this far away from the entrance to the RV. And we got up in the morning and there was a line of ants,
an ant parade
going across from underneath the refrigerator to
the garbage can.
And that took about 10 minutes to get rid of them. One quick spray down with black flag, move the cord off the anthill, and we were done with it.
But the most common pest, of course, that most people worry about is mice. And as much as we wish that we had an answer that said, oh yes, do this and you will be mouse free for eternity, we have yet to find anything that works 100%. Unfortunately, some of it has to do with one solution that may work for a particular mouse population in one area, doesn't work for the mouse population elsewhere.
And the oddest thing, so we have the park we spend time in British Columbia is in the wilderness. And we have had times there where we have caught a lot of mice. And we've been there in the winter 2 times. And one winter we were catching like 2 a week. Well, wasn't that?
It seemed like it.
It seemed like it, but maybe 1 or 2 a week. This past winter we stayed on that site and didn't get
0.
one. And we don't know why.
No.
So here's the things.
Tried everything.
Here are the things they tell you to try and do. Number one, and we've said this in one of our videos, put steel wool stuffed into all the openings where they might come in.
So where your electric cord comes in, where your sewer hose comes in, your water hose, so all those little nooks and crannies that are not really sealed, use steel wool or brass wool so it doesn't rust.
Trouble is you can't seal every opening and it will never be 100%.
No.
Another is to use a commercial product like Cab Fresh, which are these little pouches.
Yeah.
We've never tried that.
It's like potpourri that mice hate.
And the reason we've never tried it is because we've read great things about it and terrible things about it. It either works or it doesn't. It's not guaranteed. We don't know.
Dryer sheets is another one for the same thing as the steel wool. You put the dryer sheets around areas where they can get in, and they don't like the smell, which of course makes me wonder why we should be using that on our clothes. But okay.
Same thing with peppermint oil.
We've put some on cotton balls and taken like a little, like a yogurt container and poked holes in it, put the cotton balls in with it, and stick it in different areas. That seems to help. I've mixed it up into a spray bottle and sprayed it around where the tires touch the ground and where the jacks do and stuff like that.
Nothing is 100%.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And we always have traps set in the basement in order to make sure that anything that gets in.
And I want to mention something about that. I see Chris and Cherie have the most likely answer, which is get a cat, although Lisa immediately said that their cat wouldn't chase a mouse if it yelled, "Nya, nya, nya." So if you have a good mouser, a cat is great. Until, of course, it brings it to you as a gift.
Yes.
So here's the thing about mouse traps. We did a video about how to make an emergency mouse trap and catch them humanely.
Which works.
Which does work. But here's the bottom line with mouse traps. It's a double-edged sword. Setting a mouse trap has to have bait. Bait attracts mice. You could attract mice in by setting a trap. So here's what we do. We do not set traps unless we see signs of mice. And mostly what you're talking about are mouse droppings. And the way we combat mice is this. We keep our rig clean. We don't leave garbage laying around. We
vacuum regularly.
We keep it clean so that we can see if there are mice droppings, which we see mostly when we get them in the basement. So we have light gray carpet throughout the basement. If I see something that looks like a mouse dropping, I will immediately check to find out. And if it's old and hard, I'll put nitrile gloves on, like for tank dumping, or rubber gloves. And if you pick up a mouse dropping and it's hard, it's old. If it's not, it's fresh. And if you find that in your rig, you need to set traps right away with peanut butter, and we will put a link down below if you'd remember to do that.
Oh, yeah.
For those mouse traps. The greatest mouse traps ever are these little plastic, they spring back and you set them, and then
I forget what brand they are.
I forget what they are, but they're black plastic, and you never have to touch the mouse, and you can reuse them just by squeezing it and releasing it and setting it back up, and a little peanut butter in there. The big important thing is to catch them quickly before they chew up insulation and wiring or worse. Very important that you get rid of them. So be vigilant. I look around our basement all the time when I'm down there. I'm constantly puttering around and cleaning
being
up.
full-time probably helps because we are in and out of things pretty regularly, so it gives us the ability to keep an eye on, hidden areas.
But if you...
Mom asked about what about the bats we've had?
Oh, yes.
That is indeed another pest to be worried about. We've had bats roosting underneath our window screens.
If you haven't seen our video on YouTube about bats, we did 2 of them, and one of them was so frightening. We had about a dozen that I almost had a heart attack when I opened up the fridge vent. We showed in there how we put the metal mesh screens over the furnace vents.
Yes.
And how we capped off the refrigerator. Now,
to be fair, that happened in both of those events happened over the course of about a year in the same spot. We hadn't had bats be a problem for 14 years until this happened at one time, and it was probably because there was construction going on. They were cutting trees down for a new development in the area, and so I think a lot of bat habitat got destroyed, and they were looking for new places to roost. So
yeah, and
it hasn't happened since.
It hasn't happened since, and bats are not going to be a problem for you unless you stay in one place for a long time.
And to be honest, I was grateful for them because they could eat mosquitoes and keep me from being eaten alive.
And Iggy, I see your comment about using the sticky pads in the storage compartments. I just want to make one comment about those. I know that there's a lot of controversy about different types of mouse traps. There's, do you kill them? Do you not kill them? We kill them, and the reason is because we have used no-kill traps before and taken them out.
Unless you're going to drive them 10
and then
miles
caught them again
away
the next day. Unless you're going to take them for a scenic drive. But the sticky traps catches them alive and they are tortured to death. I would recommend, and we'll put a link below, these
Mike said he thinks it might be Tomcat traps.
They're like Tomcat traps, and there are other brands like that. We've bought them at Canadian Tire, and I know Walmart. They're the type that are black plastic, and they spring back on one side, and they have these teeth in them, and when they come down, they work. They're very good, and they kill them like that.
Yeah.
Those are what we recommend, and you just push down on them to release, and you can release drop the mouse's body out of it, and reset it in 2 seconds, and use them again and again and again in a sanitary way.
Yeah.
Those are our favorites. They work really well.
Yeah, they do.
And we'll add a link. So let's just see before we move on to the next one if there's any others. I think we're all set. So next up, Ian had 2 questions. He seconded Sal's questions about pests and mentioned gnats.
Very specific.
And they have a device called the Katchy.
Which is a great name.
That we looked up, and we see that gets mosquitoes and gnats.
Yep.
And gets a lot of them. You do have a big fluffy burn-a-doodle, and you hike a lot in the woods. So we're not sure they're coming off your dog necessarily, but there could be one other place.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing that is often mistaken for gnats is something called drain flies. I think they're actually tiny little moths, and they breed in the gunk that builds up in your sink drain tubes. So they lay their eggs in there, they hatch from there, and they tend to be nocturnal and come out at night. So if you're seeing
like fruit flies, right?
They're hard to tell. When they're small, they look a lot like a gnat or a fruit fly, and if you tend to find them more later in the day or at night, and if you tend to find them in areas in and around where you have a sink drain, then it could very well be that you have drain flies, not gnats. You could do a test if you take clear packing tape or clear tape. If you clean and dry around the sink drain and then put clear tape over the drain at night before you go to bed on all the drains, don't close it off completely. Leave room for air to come out and everything. If in the morning when you wake up there are things stuck to the bottom of that tape, they're drain flies. And then what you have to do is basically you need to thoroughly clean the sink drain pipe in order to get the gunk off the side that they nest in.
And we've actually taken the P-traps off our plumbing every couple of years. We'll take them off and we'll clean them out real thoroughly, because what's different about RV plumbing than plumbing in a house is dry camping, really, because when those of you who boondock a lot like we do know that when you brush your teeth, for example,
in a drizzle of water,
in a teaspoonful of water, you're not really washing all the toothpaste and the spit and everything else completely out, and your plumbing tends to get very slimy in an RV if you dry camp a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, there's one thing we forgot when we talked about this. There is a product made by Raid. They have, you've all probably heard of these foggers that you can put in a house and set them off and fog the whole house. We don't like those because they leave residue on things. But there's one, maybe you could make a note to put this in too. We'll put a link to this. It's not a mist. It's actually a smoke. And it is the greatest thing ever. And when we got those ants, that's when we used it, right?
That got rid of them.
The only thing, and we set off a couple in the basement.
We might be leery of doing that with a pet around it. They're supposed to be pet safe because they don't leave a residue like the liquid or the mist ones
But you
do.
put a couple of these up in the house and a couple down below, and they're very easy to use. You drop them into water and they go poof, and fill the RV with smoke and fill the basement with this smoke. Everything, every mosquito, fly, gnat, ant, everything will be killed, and you just need to stay away from the RV overnight or
during the day,
or for 24
start in the morning.
hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So if you do that test and it is the drain flies, then you're going to want to clean the sink drains, and you might find that it's one particular drain that's the problem. Could be the kitchen because they like the food particles that get stuck in, again, that film that builds up on the inside.
Oh, so I see also the locks have those Hep V valves. We know what those are. So I'll tell you why we clean our drain pipes once in a while. So you may have seen our video where we replaced our faucets in our bathroom sinks. When we took them apart...
Yeah, they came with the replacement drain stopper valve.
When we took them apart, they were so disgusting, I can't even describe how bad it was.
No.
So we have... dismantle, literally. I would take off your Hep V drain. I'm not sure exactly how those are attached. I know what they look like. It's just a
just for anyone who doesn't know, the Hep Vs are ones that are designed to eliminate the need for a P-trap, and so it makes it for slimmer plumbing. Usually in smaller RVs, Class Bs, and tight spaces, they use the Hep V valves.
Yeah.
And basically, it's like a rubber sleeve that comes to a closure.
Close at the bottom.
It's the pressure of the water coming down the drain that forces it to open and lets the water flow through. But then once there's no water flowing through, it closes again in order to keep the air from the gray tank from coming back.
We can take apart.
Design.
Yeah, we can take apart our plumbing without our drain plumbing without any tools. It's all just hand turn valves, and I can go underneath the kitchen sink and just take off all the black fittings that make it up, and just
don't do all the sinks at once because you need one to clean the one you're cleaning in.
But push a paper towel through it with a long screwdriver and just clean them out.
Yeah.
We've tried using like Drano, but it doesn't work very well. So
occasionally we'll just, if you have an extra bunch of hot water from boiling water for tea.
Oh yeah, you can
pour that down the drain. You can put baking soda and then put white vinegar down, and then it foams up.
It's better to use boiling water.
But the boiling water seems to work
Take a teapot and fill it with boiling water and just pour it down the drain.
Yeah.
And maybe put some regular hot water down first just to heat it up, and then flood it with boiling water, and that will get rid of a lot of that slime too.
And chances are with those Hep V valves, if you did have drain flies or an issue with that, it wouldn't be the Hep V valve itself that was the problem, it's the tube leading down to it. So it's that area where all the water is and the debris from whatever you're cleaning in the sink or brushing your teeth is all flowing past to get through the Hep V valve. It would really be that upper portion part where they would be most likely to breed.
Okay, so Ian had a great follow-up question. Okay, keeping the coach clean. I know you guys take off your shoes, but we also have this big dog and hiking, sand, schmutz, etc. Are there things we should have at the front door, special carpeting, or mats?
Okay, so not having fur kids ourselves, we can't speak specifically to that aspect of
right. We don't have no kids, no pets. We've never ever worn shoes in the house. We are the opposite extreme. So we're pretty anal retentive about it. A couple of things we could recommend. First thing, Not that you can make your dog wipe its feet, but
if you can, do a video.
Presto Fit's rugged step covers
Yeah.
are the greatest step covers ever. Those really cheap, cheesy ones that are like flimsy, artificial turf.
They're decorative.
Those
more
are
than anything.
garbage. They come apart and they are no good. We'll put a link down below, and it's in our favorite gear page also. Presto Fit's rugged step covers.
Not only are they a little bit stiffer, so they actually do something to clean the bottoms of your shoes, they last forever. I'm not sure how they can continue making these, because I don't think you ever, once you buy a set, you may never need to replace them. But they're
really wonderful. Also, Grassworks Clean Machine doormat. Again, we'll put a link to that down below. They're the ones, the doormats that look like a green or brown lawn. Very stiff stuff. That's very good.
And they're porous on the bottom, so if you do have sandy stuff in your shoes, it falls through it and doesn't clump in there.
The best thing we can recommend may not be that practical in your case, Ian, which is hardwood or tile floors versus carpet. If we had a pet, the best choice you can make if you don't already own an RV is to go with solid floors versus carpeting, or if you're going to do a renovation, is to get rid of the carpeting and replace it with, some sort of linoleum or hardwood or faux wood or tile floor. Now, I know that may not be practical. You may have carpeting that's perfectly good.
But if the dog's going to end up ruining it, then you're going to replace it with something.
How old is your dog?
That
wasn't very nice.
No,
I'm
nice.
only kidding. I'm hoping it's young and healthy.
Yes. And another thing too, one of the things we've shown before are if you do have more hardwood floors, or at least an area on the floor of tile, is ruggable, because since it's a two-piece system and you can peel the upper layer off, replace it with another version, and then toss the one in the wash, it just helps to keep the rugs a little cleaner, which means you're not going to be spreading that stuff around. So we really love them.
Ruggable is fantastic. Unfortunately, they are designed to go on solid floors, not on carpet. So if you've got wall-to-wall carpet, they don't work so well. But they are small, lightweight, machine washable, terrific. And of course, there's a discount on them if you go to our discounts page.
Yeah. And actually, the Locks asked, what about using bleach when sanitizing? I'm assuming you're meaning for the drains. The one problem with using bleach is that a lot of that biofilm that forms inside the drain is actually like it's like a fungus or what's the other like a mold, a mildew.
Yeah.
And bleach will bleach the color out of that.
It'll make it look like it went away.
But it doesn't actually kill the spores, so it just grows right back. So, and it didn't actually kill it, it just bleached the color out of it. So we actually have gotten away from using a lot of bleach where because we live full-time in such a small space, we've started using a lot of natural cleaners. At the moment, I just happen to be using Better Life products. Just really like them, and they're a little healthier, don't have a lot of odor to them. But so, and we have now found actually as a result of using those natural cleaners as opposed to the toxic bleachy ones, that we tend to have less of a problem with odors in our drain pipes, and things just seem to stay cleaner. So it takes a little more elbow grease sometimes to get them clean, but it works. Okay,
just catching up real quick with the chat. Lisa said that Dawn and vinegar followed by boiling water 10 minutes later works very well. That's a good tip.
Yeah.
The Dirt Devil vacuum sucks. Thank you, Don.
It really sucks well. That's good to know.
And I see what your situation is for the locks here. Difficult to take off your shoes for. Yeah. Two dogs, fiber mat in front of the entry.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is, if you want to keep the inside clean, unfortunately you need to get your carpet cleaned more often. If you've got pets, you need to vacuum more often. The time and difficulty and extra work it takes to clean the dog's feet off if you come in from a walk when it's raining, or if they've been in the sand.
Put little doggy booties on them when they come in the RV, maybe.
and welcome Jim. We see that he's here, and Kenny and Sabrina have a dog, and they use seat covers on their dinette. That's one thing, too. Yeah. We don't have all of our sofas are leather, so that's not so much of an issue. Okay, so let's jump into the next one. Jim and Mickey Dion asked, now that we've done just about everything that can be done to upgrade your RV home.
We still have a list.
We have a list. We still have a wish list, too. They'd like to know how we handle life on the road from the standpoint of full-timer insurance, and what's the longest period of time we've spent in one place, and or do we have a place for the winter and a place for the summer that would allow you to branch out and make side trips, and P.S. medical, including doctor's visits and prescriptions.
Okay.
So we're
going to leave this on the screen for a little while, but I will take it off after a bit just so there's more room for us.
So, couple of things. First off, many of you know we are binational. We are U.S. citizens and Canadian residents. So we have had, for over 10 years, we have had all of our medical in Canada. And I will not get political here. I will just say that the healthcare in Canada is very good and very inexpensive and comprehensive, and we don't have to have insurance until we travel out of province.
But of course, as a result of having that now, it means we are out of the loop with a lot of the issues with health insurance in the States, particularly for full-timers. So,
however, we still have done some research and also can give you a couple of tips on what you might do.
And actually, check out, first of all, I'll mention this, we don't have notes about this, but I will mention, check out Cherie and Chris's blog, Technomadia, because they have information about health insurance, and also look up wheelingit.us.
Wheelingit.us from Nina and
Nina
Paul, who many of you know who used to be full-timers.
Have also covered information about health insurance. It changes very regularly, and each year it seems like it gets more and more complicated, but at least those are both two great places to start to look.
So our RV insurance is in Canada now also, but
Correct.
We had a great experience when we were in the States. We had Progressive. We had our personal effects covered.
So it is definitely important when you're talking about full-timers coverage. You want to make sure that I'm sorry, skipping ahead, that full-timers coverage includes enough protection for all of the extra gear you're going to have on board for being full-time. So when we were insured in the States, we used an agency called Miller Agency. They specialize in RV insurance, and they work with a bunch of different providers. So at the time we had a policy through Progressive. We never had to have a claim, so we can't say whether or not it was good coverage. But at least the coverage that they provided and the options that they had for adding full-timers insurance, which gave you additional coverage for personal effects. And then we also bought additional coverage to cover even more because we just have a lot of stuff on board.
Well, things like computer equipment and other specialized things.
So that's important.
So I don't know if the Miller Agency, did you check and see if Miller RV Insurance?
Yep, they are still out there. We'll put a link.
We'll put a link. It's millerrvinsurance.com. Again, it's been
a place to start.
More than 10 years. We had a very good experience with them. Also, I see that Chris and Cherie who are posting right here is the Mobile Internet Resource Center. Looking at rverinsurance.com. They track health insurance options, so thank you for that tip.
I had a note about that coming up.
Oh, yeah.
See, RV Insurance Exchange. And actually, RV Insurance Exchange, Cherie, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they also have a telemedicine option? Because the second one of the PS to your question was about medical and prescriptions. And of course, when you're full-time on the road, it's hard to have a family physician because you're not going to be near them. So the telemedicine option can come in, particularly when dealing with chronic issues like high blood pressure or diabetes or things like that. So then at least you can have a telemedicine session with your doctor who, with those telemedicine plans, they can often prescribe in multiple states. So
also, FMCA is somewhere else to look.
Yeah,
we'll put a link down below to FMCA's.
Yeah, they just announced that new policy, the new medical insurance policy. So that's another thing to consider. There are more and more full-timers out there, and it's becoming more and more of a thing. So hopefully that will help to push the industry to start addressing it more. But like Cherie and Chris have been following the issue with full-timers who will use St. Brendan's Isle in Florida as their primary mailing address are having issues with voting issues right now. So things do happen and things change. So keep on top of that. And actually, the other part of your question, Wade, I was going to just go back to this. What's the longest time you spent in one place? I think.
Well, let's see. We have spent
long periods,
fairly long periods, working on our time requirements for Canadian citizenship. So that was like up to 15 months
in one spot,
in one province.
Mm-hmm.
So
prior to that, we had probably spent maybe three
3
months
months
at a time in like the desert Southwest for the winter.
Yeah, we spent 3 months in one spot down in Mexico one winter. We've spent a month and a month and a month in 3 consecutive places in Florida and the desert Southwest,
Right.
whether it be Palm Springs or the Phoenix area.
Yeah.
But when we first started out, things change over time. We first started out, we were moving constantly, except for like in the winter we would settle in. And now we tend to spend a little longer in one spot.
Yeah, we've gravitated towards more, again, because we are in BC as our home, we do spend summers there, so we do spend a significant amount of time in BC, whether it's at our home or just traveling around the province. So we are sort of closer to one spot and explore out from there. And then in the winter, we tend to spend maybe a little bit more time in one spot as well and use that as our exploration
And this year
spot.
may be different. We're going to be all around the desert Southwest this winter. For any of you who are going to be down there, we're going to hopefully be coming through.
That hub and spoke plan does sort of work pretty well with, driving the RV longer distances, using it as your home base to then explore out and around.
So a couple of follow-ups on insurance. Hans said they had one claim with Progressive and they were great.
Good to hear. Okay.
My mom, photo 8, says, or you can have 2 sons who handle it for you. That is an option too, but we are not offering those services to anyone else, Mom.
It also might be an expensive proposition to have 2 sons who then grow up in order to handle it for you. That's a lot of investment. You can save that money too.
Chris and Cherie have also mentioned, yes, they have a telehealth option. They just switched to Dial Care, which
I had to use
Chris and Cherie had to use. Worked out okay, but not as great as their old Teledoc. Also followed up that
RVHealth.com is a new telehealth option too. Supposed to be able to be a virtual primary care physician. Okay. Well, I hope it was not anything serious that you needed to use them for recently, Cherie.
Well, I see we have fans with Chris and Cherie and John who are fans of the Desert Southwest. We hope we hook up with all of you down there this year, because we'll be coming probably through Texas and out through the Phoenix and Quartzsite and Palm Springs. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Just like this trip actually up in the Maritimes has been completely
we have not been making any plans right now. We literally have shown up in a town and found a B&B with a vacancy sign and around dinner time and said, I guess we'll stay here. So let's jump to the next one. Kenny and Sabrina have asked of moving forward adventures. For a long time, you guys were just hands and wonderful voices in your videos. Actually, just my voice. Thank you very much. We were wondering what made you guys decide to change that up and step in front of the camera. Well, it was actually...
Are we in front of the camera now? What?
That was
a mistake.
It was totally by popular demand. People demanded it.
Oh, yeah, of course. They just needed to see our wonderful faces.
So I think what happened was that we are actually very private people, very introverted. We rarely tell people where we are and kind of keep to ourselves most of the time. I know we're not antisocial, but we are introverts. And we define introverts as people who recharge their batteries by being by themselves. And we love to meet people and love to be out and about, but in the end, we keep to ourselves most of our time. And I think in the beginning, a lot of that was a privacy kind of thing, that we didn't want people to know who we were. And it kind of got to a point where it became a bit of a game, where I would shoot videos and I'd realize that I'd shot it and you could see me clearly reflected like in the window on the side of the RV or something, and I would reshoot it so you couldn't see me.
Or we'd get caught and people would say, hey, I think I saw your reflection in your hubcap.
So after it was a game for a little bit, we realized that there were things that would just be easier to show and demonstrate on camera, and we were holding ourselves back a little bit. And I think maybe hooking up with...
I think it was laziness. It took more work to try and figure out how to script out the video without appearing in it. Particularly once we exhausted the initial topics that were all very linear, step-by-step how-to type things, and started getting into topics, just as a prime example, even we wanted to do the topic about our tech cabinet. But if we were literally just showing close-ups of a piece of equipment and talking over it for an extended period of time, it would have been a real snooze.
It makes it a little easier.
Makes it easier to just video in front of the camera. So we decided to step out from behind.
Some videos are just easier to make. And when you think about the fact that we could sit on a video and talk a little bit and not have to show doing something all the time, it actually just makes it a little easier. And I know that many of you who share your lives on the road or otherwise either on YouTube or Facebook and places like that, I know that you'll be in front of the camera, and it does take some getting used to. And I think that hanging out with people like Chris and Cherie, who we have been on camera with and guest appearances with them, same thing with Nikki and Jason of Gone with the Winds, hanging out with people who are just on camera and being on camera with them maybe made it a little easier, and we kind of thought...
We definitely had encouragement from them to step out from behind the camera, too.
Yeah, and so...
Was that the correct answer, Cherie and Chris? You said you know the answer. I hope we got that one right.
So next up we have a question from Mike Denson, who said, hi, guys. This is a little bit of a long question. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. I have a TPMS, a tire pressure monitoring system, an EEZ brand, which is approximately 6% low at his home in Colorado at over 6,000 feet altitude. At lower elevations, it becomes more accurate, and he believes that it would be right on at sea level. He has an EEZ brand TPMS, and have we experienced this? So first off, we only have experience with one brand, and that is a Pressure Pro. And we have not had that experience. Now, that said, and we had some back and forth with Mike about this. And he said he talked to EEZ.
It's a hard name.
Or maybe it's EEZ. EZ. I guess that's how you pronounce that. And he said that they basically told him he was being anal retentive and don't worry about it. So
I'm wondering, so we don't have a specific answer to this. Our Pressure Pro does not have that issue as far as we know. We haven't specifically done a test.
I was going to say
at elevation and then at sea level to compare.
There was a caveat to that, and that is we haven't yet specifically tested for exactly what you're saying. Now, one thing we do, we periodically will remove our sensors and compare the sensor reading to a known accurate tire pressure gauge. And we have found that our Pressure Pro averages about 2 pounds low on all tires or so. 1 pound to 2 pounds low, which is okay. It means either we bring it up to where the Pressure Pro says the rear tires are at exactly 85 PSI, which is where we keep them, which would mean they're at 87, which is okay to be a couple of pounds high. If you're going to be off, better to be a couple of pounds high.
As long as you're not exceeding the capacity of the tire.
Or, what we normally do, we will set the rear tires to exactly 85 with a known gauge. On go the sensors, and when they read 83, I know they're at 85. We have done that at different elevations and have not noticed the problem you're talking about. We think it may be brand related.
Yeah, so with a regular tire pressure sensor, not a TPMS sensor, but an actual tire pressure gauge, the pressure that it's reading is what they call gauge pressure. So it's a differential between atmospheric pressure and the pressure in the tire. So when you measure at sea level, you're going to get one reading. And assuming all other factors being the same other than the elevation. So of course, if you were to be at 70 degrees at sea level and you did that test and got a reading of, let's say, 80 PSI, if you took that same tire and then moved it to 6,000 or 10,000 feet elevation, also at the same temperature, 70 degrees, and took a reading, the reading will now be higher. Not because the pressure in the tire has changed, but because the atmospheric pressure has reduced. So the actual difference between the two is now higher, you get a higher reading. So it's possible that maybe the EEZ TPMS is not actually doing a gauge reading where it's taking into account the ambient atmospheric pressure and may just be giving you an absolute reading of the tire pressure, I
Yeah,
don't know.
so we thought of that. We thought, so let's
So
suppose...
your tire gauge is now at elevation is reading higher,
Yeah.
and the TPMS is reading the absolute pressure in the tire. That could be the difference.
So, right, let's suppose you took your tire and you set it at 70 degrees at sea level, put your tire pressure sensor on, and now you have that sealed tire. We don't know if that sensor is going to work the way a regular gauge would. In other words, if you were at the top of a mountain, if you had done that and you're at the top of a 10,000 foot mountain at 80 degrees, which both of those factors will raise the pressure, temperature and elevation, would the pressure gauge is going to be accurate. We don't know if you were to then take off your EEZ sensor at 10,000 feet at 80 degrees and put it back on, maybe it would read differently.
Reset it, right?
That might reset it because the atmosphere there is different.
Yeah. So we looked at one of the manuals for the AccuTire digital tire pressure gauge that we use, and they actually say in order to quote unquote reset the digital gauge, you push it against the valve stem just enough to get air to flow and get it to turn on, so it re-zeros. And by doing that, it's basically now rereading the atmospheric pressure in order to give you the correct reading, the correct gauge reading of the tire pressure versus the atmospheric pressure. So I don't know if that same thing would be true with the TPMS sensor, if once you got to elevation, if you took them off and then put them back on, if that would now reset them and they would read the same as your gauge.
That would be an interesting test. Interesting test. So next time you're at one elevation, note the temperature and note the elevation. Take your pressure, your TPMS sensors off.
Do a reading
with your gauge. Set your tire exactly and put the sensor back on, and then drive it down.
No, I was going to say, and see if they read the same at that point, because now you, in theory, have reset the TPMS sensor.
That's true. You've reset the TPMS. Now go to a different temperature and or elevation combination. Ideally, lower temperature, lower elevation, or higher temperature, higher elevation.
Yeah.
Because, of course, if you went to a higher elevation and a lower temperature, those could offset each other.
Yeah. Oh, and Mike said he's had them off several times at my altitude, and it doesn't reset. So there goes that theory.
There goes that theory.
I was going to say the other thing is, again, not to necessarily agree with EZ tire pressure monitor about quote unquote being too anal, but again, we don't necessarily rely on our TPMS to be quote an accurate reading of the tire pressure as much as we're looking for it to alert us to dramatic changes in that pressure. So if a tire was overheating because of a brake dragging or maybe a bearing going bad, and the pressure in that tire was increasing because of the rapidly increasing heat, we'd want a warning, either about the temperature or about the increasing pressure. Right. Or if there was a steady leak or a fast leak, we would want that warning. So we're not necessarily using our TPMS as a tire pressure gauge as much as we are using it as
an alarm.
An alarm, right. Exactly. So maybe if you change your mindset, it might maybe help you to get past the issue of it being different.
I also see that Iggy said he's found he can use 3 different gauges and get 3 different readings, which one to believe.
Whichever one's right, Iggy. It's simple as that.
It's the same reason we don't keep 3 thermometers in the refrigerator, because they all read differently, and it's annoying to know. We don't know which one is right.
Now, we did find in doing some research about the differences with the tire pressure gauges that Consumer Reports actually reviewed a bunch of tire pressure gauges,
including the one that we use and we have in our favorite gear page.
I will make a note of that.
It is the AccuTire, the little digital AccuTire. It costs like $12 or so. It's $15,
but they actually rated it very highly for accuracy.
It's very good. We really like it a lot.
And then throw out all the rest.
Excellent. So I think
that was a good question, Mike. So thank you for asking that one.
Yeah, it's and as far as which gauge to believe, Iggy, generally I say you could
read them all and take the average.
You read them all and take the average. But that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. And again, part of doing your 4-corner weights and then checking your tire chart to know the proper pressures, and then adding in a little bit of a fluff in order to account for variations in elevation and temperature and things like that.
Well, that's another thing. Don't chase your tire pressure. So your tire pressures, we keep meaning to get a video done about exactly how to set your tire pressures based on the manufacturer's tire charts and your corner weights. Mm-hmm. It's a little complicated, but not that bad. It's very important. We do need to make a video about that.
Yeah, I was just actually, since we've recently changed a bunch of equipment on our RV, like changing our batteries out, it's probably time to get.
We are due to add 2 new tires this spring on our way north in Oregon. We will try to get that done.
Yeah.
So, it's so important that tire pressures get set correctly, and such a misunderstood topic. But it all is about how much weight you're putting on it, and we'll get into it in detail.
Right.
We'll get into it.
When in doubt, inflate to the maximum tire pressure rating on the side of the tire, because that makes sure that the tire can handle the weight that's on it.
Just until you get a weight done.
But of course, you will suffer with harsher ride as a result of the tire being.
That's not a way to stay. That's a way to start.
You won't be happy with that for long.
Right. So next up, Mary and Paul.
My finger is not working tonight.
Said first off, they're envious of our Newfoundland adventure. We hope that inspires you, Mary and Paul, to do the same thing.
Everyone
hope you'll be sharing some of it in a video very soon. We're not sure about that, and
we've sort of been on vacation while we've been here.
And also partly because we did a whole big video series in Australia, and it's not exactly what we're known for, so people weren't that interested like they are with other travel vloggers.
And other people do it better.
We are, I think we've mentioned to some of you, we are on our way to England very soon to RV in England, and we will make at least a couple of videos about that.
Yeah.
So, back to their question. Driving a Toad. Can you share some of your expert driving tips? They mentioned that they got a Roadmaster tow bar package installed on their Class C with a 1999 Jeep Wrangler.
Nice.
Supplemental braking system, TPMS, covers both vehicles.
Nice.
Excellent.
You guys are set.
The RV already has a rear camera that we can point at the Toad, as well as side cameras that come on when the turn signal is used. So from an equipment standpoint, I think
you're ready to go.
We are set, and I think you are too.
You're good.
We're a bit nervous about driving it for the first time. We hope Peter can put his instructor hat on and give some best practices and tips. So I'm going to give you a couple of things. First off, the most important thing is to understand how to hook it up and to operate it, as opposed to how to drive it. And that means that you want to make sure that you know all the steps that are required for your car. It's the biggest thing is the car. How to connect it. I'm glad you got Roadmaster, because Roadmaster makes fantastic products.
Very happy with ours.
And you want to make sure you know how to hook it up, how to plug it in, how to check, make sure the lights work, that the brake system is working, that when you step on the brake in the RV, the brake goes down in the car as well. And all the little procedures, whether it's turning the key and running it through the gears, whether it's just putting it in neutral if you have a stick shift, things like that.
Make a checklist if you need to for the beginning, so that way you have something to just keep checking off when you do the process.
That is by far the single biggest thing you're going to have to overcome when it comes to carrying a Toad around behind you. The other main rule, never ever back up with your Toad connected. You've probably heard this before, and I know some people have done it. Maybe we've done it a foot or two, maybe really straight just because we had to. Kind of generally don't back up. If you get yourself in a situation where you have to back up, disconnect, turn around, reconnect.
And just the reasoning behind it, it seems stupid. Like, I can pull it forward, why can't I go backward? Think of it like pushing a shopping cart backwards with the floppy wheels on your side. It's very hard to control. Same thing happens with the car with the steering wheels now in the back position that you're pushing. They turn, the car will jack, and it puts a severe pressure on the tow bar.
It could break something.
Correct. So that's the reason behind not backing up.
So here's the good news, Mary and Paul. When it comes to driving with a car behind you, there is virtually nothing different when you're driving down the road, even when you're going around a corner. I'm going to give you a little way to find out how this works. So first off, most tow cars track so close to the rear wheels on the RV that if your RV wheels make it around the corner, so will the tow car. Now, it's not absolute. It could be a little different depending on the rear overhang and how sharply the wheels turn and how long your tow bar is and some other factors. But here's what you want to do. Go to a parking lot where it's just wide open and there's tons and tons of space. Get out into the lot with your car connected behind your RV and turn your wheel, start to go around a corner and cut your wheel as hard as it will go to the right, like you're making the tightest circle you possibly can. And when you are locked over and you're in the process of making a turn, just stop. Set the brake with the steering wheel still locked all the way over to the right. And go out behind you, if you have a little traffic cone, something that you're not going to worry about running into. And put it down, touching, you take a water bottle and just put it right up against your rear tire on your RV. And now get back in the RV and keep driving and drive slowly forward. And maybe you'll have somebody standing out back with a walkie-talkie by that water bottle and one person driving, and go really, really slowly. And what you want to do is keep going until the tires on the car come over near that water bottle. And what you're going to find out is one of three things. Either the car is going to miss the water bottle by a foot or so, it's going to perfectly clear the water bottle, or it's going to run over the water bottle by maybe a foot or so. It's going to be somewhere probably pretty close. And what you're going to find out is how exactly your toad tracks behind your RV. And you'll be surprised, I'm going to guess, that the rear wheels on the car will come within inches of wherever the rear wheels on the RV went. And this is true whether you're locked over as hard as you can go,
or anywhere in between.
Or anywhere in between. From those tires will track with the rear wheels most of the time. So drop us a note after you've tried that out and let us know. I haven't tested every RV and toad combination out there, but in my experience so far, if your right rear tire gets around that corner, so will the toad. Within inches.
And if you're nervous about it, again, a lot of this comes down to, I always like to think myself, if I get into a situation where I'm nervous about stuff like that, there are millions of people doing this every single day in tight situations, and they get through without too much concern. So I try to calm myself down by thinking, if anybody else can do it, I can do it too. And also, just sort of going back, I think, Mary, you had asked questions before about having had that situation of driving through the construction zone and being, sort of nervous about it being tight and narrow. And again, I always harken back to Peter's recommendation of, if you're going through an area like that and you see up ahead of you that there's a bus or a tractor trailer or a construction truck or another RV and they're getting through, you can get through. So
nobody out there is wider than 102 inches unless they have a wide load sign on them. All tractor trailers, all RVs. So
I have faith in you, Mary.
We know you can do it.
You can do it.
Now, before we get to Jim and Mary's, Mary and Paul's follow-up question, yes. Jim and Mickey had a question: with a tow dolly and front-wheel drive towed, neutral or park? So, we don't have a dolly, but I'm going to go out on a limb, and someone here is going to correct me if I'm wrong, or you'll correct me if I'm wrong. You're going to drive up onto your dolly and put your car in park because it's front-wheel drive, and that's going to lock the front wheels onto the dolly. You're going to strap it on, and you're going to leave the parking brake off so that the rear wheels roll freely. I think that's correct.
I believe that is correct, yes. Yeah. I would assume that your dolly manual had instructions to tell you, and also, if you can find it, since you said you had was it Jim and Mickey that have the 1999 Jeep? I forget. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mike says they drive in park with their dolly.
Yeah,
front wheel drive on the dolly. You don't want it to roll on the dolly. No. Get it up there, put it in park.
And just double check your car's manual for dolly towing, because it should be.
It probably says. Yeah. Probably says.
Just to be sure, just in case our gut instinct is wrong.
Okay, and so also a follow-up question, also from Mary and Paul. We'd also like to hear about how to handle trash while boondocking, especially in areas with bears, raccoons, mountain lions, etc. Having grown up in bear country and knowing what happens to cars when food is left inside, I'm not wild about stowing it in a bay, on the roof, or in the toad. And I know you're not supposed to mess with trees on public lands, so hitching up a cache may be frowned upon.
Indeed.
So a couple of things. Recycling is a big part of this.
Yeah.
We recycle very heavily, very diligently, regardless of where we are. Sometimes we're in areas where they don't recycle very well, and we end up hauling recycling in the back of our car until we get to where our next stop, sometimes for weeks. All that recycling has been washed out, cleaned out. There are generally not bad food odors in there. We keep those sometimes in the back of our car. But the reason I bring up recycling is because when you recycle, you end up with a lot less trash on board, since recycling fills up the garbage can more than the stuff that belongs in the garbage. And as a result, we don't make a lot of trash on board. Now, even when we're out in an area where we're boondocking, we rarely would stay on the RV for such an extended period that we couldn't dispose of trash. So let's suppose we're in BLM land somewhere or a national forest. We're going to go out
and even
every few days, and we'll take our trash with us and dispose of it somewhere where there's a proper receptacle and not let it accumulate on board.
And I was going to say, and even most often in those places, if you are dry camping, you'll still most likely in a lot of bear country, you're going to still be in a national forest campground or someplace like that will have bear safe garbage facilities for you to put your garbage in. So
we never have.
Plus, being in a hard-sided motorhome.
Yeah.
Is a big help. They generally don't bother.
The safest place you can be in those situations is in a hard-sided RV.
Yeah, you don't typically
even though bears get up on cars and will literally smash the window out as they bend the door frame down, which many of us who've been to national parks in bear country have seen the pictures that they put up, where the bear will literally put its paws on the edge of the roof and just bend the window frame down and smash the window out. We'd never put garbage in our car unless we are driving it to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't need to do that is we never accumulate more than what's in our tall kitchen trash can in the RV. We never have more garbage on board at any one time than that. It's safe in the garbage can in the kitchen. It only gets removed from there when we're actively taking it to throw it out.
Well, and again, I would think that the other thing that would be the danger would be if you were doing things that were leaving food smells immediately outside your RV, that would then encourage them to potentially investigate further. So obviously, if you're in serious bear country, you're going to need to put your grill away after you use it to get the grilling smells from being so prevalent.
Yeah, that's the thing. We won't leave.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, in 15 years of full timing and 15 years of being in
a lot of bear country. We've never had a problem. And we have been in such heavy-duty bear country that we've had bears in the campsite, in the tent campsite next to us with people yelling, "Bear, bear," at more than once. And we've never had a bear try to get into the RV, ever. So
I think cleanliness is next to godliness on that one.
Oh, there's an interesting idea. We store small amounts of food waste in the freezer pending disposal.
Oh, smart.
You have a big enough freezer that's good.
Or you're not full-time.
So that is the last of our pre-asked questions. And we're just coming up on 90 minutes in. We're getting to a good time to come to a close here. While we ask if anybody has any last questions, I want to put up a picture to inspire those of you who have not yet been to Newfoundland to get here. This was taken a few days ago on the Skirwink Trail between Port Rexton and Trinity. A gorgeous, gorgeous hike. If that's not pretty enough for you, this was taken up near Twilling Gate on
the French Head Trail.
The French Head Trail. It is fantastic.
It's like the ultimate combination of every beautiful coastline that you have seen, from Acadia to Oregon to Northern California to Washington. There are beaches, there are rocky beaches, there are rocky coasts, there's forest that goes right out to the coast, there's water everywhere. And
it's beautiful.
And not that many people. It's like nirvana in that regard.
We had no expectations at all, and no plan. We didn't have one single reservation where to stay. This weekend, we're on our way. It's Labor Day weekend, and we realize, we're going to end up in the biggest national park in the province on Labor Day weekend. We don't have any reservations.
Whoops.
We got a place right in the national park. No problem.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you should do that, but
so it's not smart.
couple of quick questions here. First off, Hans asked about humidity. What's the best suggestion for protecting the inside of your RV from humidity while using it and while it's not being used? RV cover. So Hans, I'm going to direct you to a video we did many years ago called How to RV in the Winter. And we had tips from squeegeeing down the shower walls after you shower to get that excess water down the drain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it depends on the climate that you're having the issue in. So if it's cold weather versus hot and humid weather,
yes,
those are two different things.
That's true.
So, obviously in cold weather climates, you want to make sure you crack a window because it's the humidity that you're generating from cooking and showering and breathing and expiring and perspiring while you've got everything all closed up to keep the cold out, or rather to keep the heat in. So you're causing that humidity buildup as a result of that. Versus being in Louisiana in August. When
I think that generally.
So you're going to want to use dehumidifiers if you have the electricity to do it because you're hooked up. You could run a small a dehumidifier to pull the humidity out, which will of course make it feel cooler if you're in a hot.
But the big problem with humidity is condensation, which is going to happen when it's winter out.
Right.
We've never had a condensation problem in the summer, and we've been in some awful. Terrible humid conditions. But you could
get mold and mildew issues in a very humid climate for storing.
You could.
And actually, the one caution we have about storing with the cover will, of course, protect the RV from UV and
bird droppings, sap.
But they tend to cause problems with chafing on the finish of the RV if it's windy. So that can be an issue. And if they are not made of a breathable material to make sure that, or have the vents to enable the heat and moisture to get out, you could actually be trapping more moisture inside. And then you're really going to need to make sure that you put in either an electrical/mechanical dehumidifier in that you can either drain to the outside.
Or like those dry Z-air things.
Or those dry Z-air things, exactly. Right. So you definitely want to get that moisture out.
So John, thank you for the tip about Rocky Harbor. We will be going by there tomorrow. We will check that out.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Mike has a question. Mike Reynolds, we're trying to decide between Roadmaster and Blue Ox. What are the performance differences? This is an easy one from my standpoint. We owned a Blue Ox tow bar for 12 or 13 years, and we thought it was fine. We thought it was normal to not be able to get it disconnected without fighting with it. And then we switched to Roadmaster, and honestly, I would not go back to a Blue Ox. I know they make
they do
a
have
competitive
new models now.
Model that's newer that won't bind, but my experience with most Blue Ox tow bars is that they bind if you don't try to disconnect it on nice straight level surface. If you're in a corner
or with the car downhill so that it's pulling away.
I can disconnect our Roadmaster tow bar like that no matter what the circumstances. We have never ever gotten it to bind no matter what we did. We are Roadmaster fans.
Yeah. And
love their products. If I were going to buy a new one today, I would go right for Roadmaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Now again, of
course, make sure it's the all-terrain version.
Right, because those have the non-binding.
Most of them are now. And if you're, by the way, if cost is no object and you want the best tow bar we have ever seen, get the Nighthawk, which is the one with the LED lights in it. It's obviously their most expensive model, but we arranged a special on that with Roadmaster. If you decide you want to get a Nighthawk, make sure you get the RV Geek Special, which gets you a free lock and a free cover, which is like an $89 value.
Yeah, right. It's a little something anyway.
Yeah, it's something. So that's just our experience and our opinion was we kind of kick ourselves like we were fighting with our tow bar.
Yeah, we were not looking to get rid of our Blue Ox. It definitely worked well for us for all that time. It towed our car safely and worked, but it was when we were having a conversation with Nikki and Jason saying we were going to, Nick and Jason Wynn of Gone with the Wind, saying we were going to do a video showing how to deal with your tow bar when it binds. And they looked at us like we were from Mars and said, "What do you mean your tow bar binds?" And they had a Roadmaster, and so that was what spawned our move to Roadmaster, and we definitely at this point wouldn't go back.
Let's see. There's a question from T.R. Crabtree. We have a question. What's the best option for an RV toll transponder that works on multiple toll roads in different states?
Move west. Oh.
I was just going to say there aren't many tolls out west where we spend most of our time RVing. So I don't know that's one we can answer so easily.
Mike Reynolds said we use EEZ Pass to cover a lot of states from Illinois to New England.
Thank you, Mike.
Would be nice if they standardized that and came up with one that covered all
of the
toll roads.
I know that EEZ Pass is all throughout the New York City area. My
New
mom
England.
lives in that area, and she has an EEZ Pass in her car. And I know that you can use EEZ Pass in more than just passenger cars. I think there's a way to set it up for which vehicle it's going to be in, and it's only authorized to be in one vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, because it determines the toll class.
Right.
But yeah, move out west. There's no tolls out here.
Thank you very much, Kenny, for the comment on Instagram. We will have more, we hope, from Gross Morn.
Yeah.
Hot and humid down in Florida. Let's see. The Lock said that has on both, thinks Roadmaster is better. Blue Ox is still fine, and again, Blue Ox does make a non-binding tow bar.
I forget the model now.
Roadmaster makes tons of non-binding tow bars.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what binding is, it's what makes it easy to disconnect when you're at a weird angle, like you come around a corner or you're at a slope and you try and release the tow bar to disconnect it. Mm-hmm. If you have to fight, we used to have to stand up and jump up and down on top of our Blue Ox tow bar to get it to release.
I had to get in the car and start it up and actually start backing it away
and fighting
to
with
pull the pressure off of the handle so that Peter could release them.
Kenny and Sabrina have an all-terrain, which is a Roadmaster tow bar. EEZ Pass, good. EEZ Pass and Sun Pass in Florida. I-Pass and EEZ Pass in Illinois. Great. Wow. Up to New England. Perfect. Oh, that's great. Thank you for all that information. I'm glad all you people who go to the east more than we do know about this stuff.
And when we're in the east, we stay off the toll roads.
And we try to stay off the toll roads. One road I can tell you to stay off is the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
That's expensive.
We drove out from New Jersey to
Falling
Water in the Pennsylvania area.
You said Pennsylvania area, which
I'm sorry, Pittsburgh.
The Pittsburgh area.
To Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, and we went on the turnpike, and I thought we had just bought a mortgage or something. It was so expensive.
It was pricey.
So, I think if there aren't any other questions, we're right exactly at an hour and a half. That's great.
Thank you guys for all of the great questions.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry we're here in this nondescript
motorhome with RV
hotel room. It's very boring on the walls here. It's
there's no artwork or anything.
But next month we will be back. We will be broadcasting next month from New Brunswick, if all goes as planned, toward the end of September.
Not New Brunswick, New Jersey, Mom.
Sorry, not New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Just to be clear on that.
New Brunswick in the Maritimes in Canada, right on the Bay of Fundy. So hopefully follow us on Instagram, RV Geeks, of course. We've been putting up pictures. If you want to know where we are in virtual and sometimes real time, Instagram is the only place to do that. So we'll go back over this video in the next couple of days. We'll timestamp when these questions were asked. So those of you watching later on, and we'll also add in all those links to all the things we talked about. How much a night? That's the last question, I think. How much a night? You mean how much a night for the hotel?
For this hotel?
We're averaging so far about 150 Canadian dollars a night for all the lodging here.
Right, which we've actually been staying in a fair number of B&Bs, so then that includes breakfast, which helps offset some of the food costs. Right. But when we looked at the cost of bringing the RV over on the ferry and then paying for campgrounds and RV parks while we were here, we just figured it was simpler to bring the car. And actually, we've been enjoying sort of the different mode of travel of hopping in the car when we check out of the hotel in one town, driving through and exploring an area until we're tired, and finding a bed and breakfast.
And we don't have to go back to the RV because there is no RV.
So it's not hub and spoke. We just get to travel along. So it's it's been an interesting experience.
Anyway, let's call it a night. Thank you all so much for being here. We can't tell you how much we appreciate your participation and your support and your being here with us. And for us introverts to have a small group like this is a lot easier.
We hope you have good plans for the Labor Day weekend, and if you're going anywhere, hopefully you have reservations.
I see the Locks are going there next year, so have a great trip.
Yeah.
You're going to sign us off, yes?
I'm going to sign us off.
Thanks, everybody. Good night. Have a great holiday weekend. Safe travels, and thanks for being. Take care.